I play a lot of different game genres, but one of the two I've had a lower play rate of recently is the Metroidvania. The other being RPGs. Which is weird considering I used to love Metroid. Not that I don't like it anymore, I just haven't played it in a while. And after playing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night and getting the bad ending, I kinda convinced myself I just didn't care for the genre anymore after I found the game to be just kind of okay. But recently, on a complete whim, as tends to happen a lot, I decided to get the Castlevania collections on Steam, and played through Aria of Sorrow. Now, the only Castlevania games I had played previously was, well, most of the first one, and a bit of Symphony of the Night. And I enjoyed both a decent amount, but how did Aria fare considering my attitude going in? Well, it is almost Halloween, so why don't we find out? Welcome to Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. Castlevania Aria of Sorrow was developed and published by Konami and released on the Game Boy Advance, and is actually the third GBA Castlevania game, released after Circle of the Moon and Harmony of Dissonance, with the interesting twist of taking place in future Japan rather than past Europe, with the basic premise going something like: the year is 2035. And high school student Soma Cruz is heading over to a shrine to watch the first eclipse of the century with his friend Mina, when suddenly they black out and find themselves in Dracula's castle. Yeah, sure, why not? With a man named Genya Arikado just happening to be there to explain this to them. After fighting off some enemies with him, Soma discovers he can absorb and use the powers of demons, which he can apparently do now, even to his shock. With no other hints as to what to do besides Genya telling him to head to the Master's Chamber, Soma sets off on his quest to escape the castle. I don't have anything profound to say here, it's literally as sudden to the point as I laid out. I'm almost disappointed, to be honest. I also don't really have much to say on the visuals either, other than they're pleasant to look at. Like, the sprite work won't blow you away, but it's still good. I guess it's worth mentioning that this game is awfully gory for a GBA game. Like, not like in a "how dare they have blood in my Christian handheld" or any of that garbage. Just in a I wasn't expecting that, despite the fact it just kind of fits with the setting in a way. I don't know, it's just kind of weird considering, Nintendo handheld. And again, I guess by the time the early 2000s rolled around, Nintendo kind of stopped giving a damn. Mostly. Okay, I guess the character portraits are also interesting. Mainly Soma, who at first glance you'd expect to be kinda edgy based off the time period that the game was made in said portrait. But in all honesty, he's actually just kind of a dope. And not in like that cool subversive way, like with someone like Ragnar the Blood Edge where he looks edgy as fuck, but it turns out he's the only normal person in a world full of crazy. More in the style mismatch way, I guess. But what isn't a style mismatch is the areas Soma travels through. There isn't an insane variety or anything, but it more than makes up for it with cohesion. Everything feels like it's part of the same location, and it's all stuff you'd find in a castle. Not that I've ever been to a castle, mind you. I don't get out of the house much. But I do have a good enough knowledge of cliches to have a basic idea. On the sound side, music good. I mean, it's GBA compressed, but as expected from the Castlevania music team, it's some really good stuff. Wish I had more to say, but I genuinely got nothing besides it's really good. Sound design was also good across the board. There wasn't anything that really seemed off at any point, but nothing really stood out either, which is, a point in its favor, because that means everything just works as intended. Now on the gameplay side, Aria of Sorrow, to the shock of nobody, is a Metroidvania. Meaning most of the game is spent wandering around the map trying to find the upgrades needed to progress to new parts of the map. The map overall isn't that big, but makes up for it by having most areas be pretty memorable, so backtracking is rarely an issue, even with the map having no details as to what is where. I was able to pinpoint where things were pretty easily, and if you do get lost, you can always ask Mina for hints at the castle entrance. Soma at his base has access to a knife which he randomly decided to have on him on his peaceful day of watching the eclipse. I don't know why he has it, maybe he was planning a murder later. And can jump. That's it. But you'll quickly pick up other weapons and armor throughout the castle or buy them from Hammer's shop once you meet him. These come in a few different types. While most of them are swords, I've noticed a trend that there are what we'll call thrusting weapons and slashing weapons. Thrusting weapons are faster but only go directly in front and can basically be spammed for past hits, and slashing weapons go in an overhead arc but are slower and do more damage. There are also spears and lances which are thrusting weapons, but the one I tried was so slow I quickly dropped it and went back to my sword almost instantly. You can find axes and hammers as well, but I didn't even try using them. Slow weapons that do a million damage in one hit just aren't my playstyle. You of course can also find various healing items as well, before I forget. Your other combat options are the demon souls you absorb. These give a variety of different ranged attacks and can be used by consuming the MP bar and come in 3 different types. Red souls are what you're going to be using the most and serve as your ranged combat options, usually firing some sort of creature or weapon. I actually got a real kick out of this bird I picked up early on. Blue souls are more utility based, such as giving you a ring of fire around you or allowing temporary transformations. And yellow souls, for the most part, adjust your properties, such as increasing stats or letting you walk on water in one case. I'd personally like to say I have a wide variety to show in my footage, but I really don't. Because from what I've gathered, and my playthrough basically confirms, the drop rates on these are horrendous. It's very much a make-do with what little you happen to have to run into sort of system, which on one hand can enhance replay value, because each playthrough you try different souls out. But on the other, it can lead to some issues when you need to get certain ones for reasons I'll get into later. Soma will also find various souls that will grant him movement upgrades, such as a backdash or double jump. These will be found in various areas of the castle, usually after a boss fight. Combat in general is pretty simple. I tend to play a decent amount of action games, so it took a bit to adjust to the lack of combos and other options those kind of games tend to have for the player. But it's far from bad, it's more of a player thing than anything else. The enemies for the most part won't pose much of a threat to Soma if you don't just rush in like a fool, and this unfortunately applies to the bosses as well. As long as you're on level, most of the first 3/4 of the game won't really pose much of a threat. It wasn't until death that I actually had to really start paying attention to boss fights, and even then some wandering around the castle to see where else I could go, combined with some tactics adjustments, sealed his fate. The only other boss that was a real pain besides the true final boss was the boss in the arena, but that was entirely me not having the most up-to-date equipment when I fought him, so might as well ignore that. Overall, gameplay is good if a little easy. If I had to levy one nitpick, is that I think Soma is a little slow. Most of the time it's fine, but whenever I had to backtrack for whatever reason, it did become noticeable. And I guess also I don't think there were enough teleport rooms, but that's probably asking too much. Like honestly, I think if there were more teleport rooms, Soma speed wouldn't be an issue at all. But whatever, that's just me. What I'm saying is forward dash would have been nice to have is all. This stuff is far from a deal breaker, and the map is small enough once again that it's not a big deal, but kinda just me being a little impatient. Not that I can help it. Now the story on the other hand is spoiler warning until the conclusion, I guess. Here's a timestamp if you want it. There's barely one. You spend most of your time just wandering around the castle aimlessly until you figure out where to go next. But there are a few other characters you can run into, those being Yoko, a mysterious woman who works with Genya, the army man Hama, who just decides to open up a shop randomly because what else are you gonna do in a monster-infested castle, I guess, the amnesiac Jay, who later turns out to be Julius Belmont, the one who defeated Dracula in 1999, sealing the castle into the eclipse, and our villain of the week, Graham Jones, who intends to inherit Dracula's power. And, I don't know, probably take over the world. You can just kind of run into them borderline at random, and they say a few things, then just kind of leave. Not really helping is Soma just kind of being a dope, once again. I don't dislike him or anything, but he really just comes off as really dumb sometimes. That portrait really tells a different story than what's actually going on in that head. But anyways, Soma eventually confronts Graham in the throne room, and after a pretty neat but not too hard fight once you figure out the tricks to it, the day is saved, I guess, in this really anticlimactic ending. However, as hinted by Soma commenting it feels like the castle is calling him, there's more. By finding 3 books you can acquire hints onto certain demon souls together. those being the Flame Demon, Succubus, and the Giant Bat. Only one of these is mandatory, so I hope you enjoy farming! I sure loved smacking this Flame Demon over and over again with no luck on the drop. But by having all 3 souls equipped during the entirety of the grand fight, do not equip them last second or else you'll get the normal ending again. Game doesn't really tell you this, so thanks. Actually, literally, I had a friend in a Discord call with me who explained that to me, so thanks pal, I would have had to go to Google if it weren't for you. Anyways, by having all 3 of those equipped during the entire fight, you'll trigger the true ending path, in which it will be revealed that Soma is Dracula's reincarnation, sporting I want to say much, but really it's only slightly edgier design. And Genya tells him in order to be freed from his fate, he must cut off the source of the chaos influencing Dracula's spirit or something. Whatever, we got more games that too long didn't read. Hidden in the castle is a mysterious black door that you cannot access until this point of the game. Entering it will lead to a fight with Julius, and yeah, this is probably the best boss in the game. I enjoyed it. He's pretty challenging too, and the remix of Vampire Killer is, pardon the pun, quite killer. I'll see myself out. Defeating him will let you access the Chaotic Realm, which despite its name is very straightforward and has kind of chill music. Neat. Well, I guess it's a good thing it's pretty simple because there are a shit ton of tough enemies and your map no longer works. And at the end of it all, we confront chaos. But not before a nice motivational speech from all the other characters. How nice. Because holy shit, Chaos put me through the ringer. Like seriously. I kind of played very evasive during the trek to it, so I was probably underleveled, and I did have to grind a bit between some attempts, but Chaos is probably the only thing I'd call really tough in this game. I guess maybe Julius as well, but I kind of ended up just camping him out with a laser beam, so I don't know, it depends on what souls you have lying around. Anyways, especially when you hit Chaos Phase 2. I'm going to say this right now. Get I believe it was the Giant Worm Soul and the Super Jump. It'll allow you to camp out and fully heal on the first phase after you get him down to 1 statue, without spending resources, making the second phase much easier. Because the second phase is a doozy, especially once you realize you get a bad ending if you die, meaning you have to soft reset the game every time you die to make attempts quicker. But somehow, someway, I persevered and managed to kill Chaos. But man, I was drained afterwards. Pretty good boss though. And the day is saved for now. The end. So I guess we have some post-game content too. After beating the true end, the player is told how to play as Julius, and he's pretty fun. He has all the moves he has during his boss fight, and basically has all the required mobility to go anywhere in the castle. Unfortunately, he doesn't have Soma as a boss. Big shame after seeing that bad ending a billion times. So what did I think after all that? I actually liked it quite a bit. I honestly feel like most of my complaints are kind of nitpicky. Might not be the best thing I ever played, but it was genuinely a good time, and I look forward to playing more Castlevanias and other Metroidvanias in the future. But for now, I don't know what to do now. Shit. Oh, I think I got it. Well, have a nice whatever time of day it is, and I'll see you next time.